Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This episode is sponsored by GrandPad. GrandPad is the all-in-one tablet designed especially for senior adults. With GrandPad, you get safe, simple video calling and photo sharing. Users can create a private family network that allows for secure photo and video sharing. The GrandPad utilizes a simple format that allows seniors to enjoy games, music, email, and more. Visit our special GrandPad website designed exclusively for the Heart of Hospice listeners at grandpad.net/THOH.
In today's episode, we're getting real about the tough stuff of caregiving with my guest, Jennifer O'Brien. Having been a practice management consultant and an educator to physicians for over 35 years, the wife and now widow of a physician, author Jennifer O'Brien has a unique and thorough understanding of healthcare. Still, with all of this experience, caregiving for her dying husband was both the greatest honor and challenge of her life. Through his illness and after her husband Bob died, Jennifer documented their experience with dying, as well as her own grief, using collages, tableaus, and writing to create an art journal. And that journal became her first book, The Hospice Doctor's Widow, an art journal of caregiving and grief. Jennifer's new book was written to empower family caregivers as the leaders they are. Care Boss, aptly named, builds on her professional experience as a healthcare CEO and her personal experiences as a caregiver. Jennifer O'Brien has become the caregiver's caregiver. You can find her books and all her free resources at jenniferaobrien.com. You're going to love this conversation. This is a repeat guest for me, Jennifer O'Brien. She's a friend. She is talking with me about her new book, Care Boss, and her reasons for writing it, and that serendipity moment when the idea came to her. She talked about why she chooses to use the word fine in one of the chapters of the book, and why people told her not to use it. She also encourages caregivers to post their mission and vision and values where they can be reminded of what's important, and so that others who are in the household can see their mission and vision and know them as well. Her book, Care Boss, also offers several tools for caregivers that provide guidance and empower caregivers in their work. Jennifer has also republished her book, The Hospice Doctor's Widow, with extra artwork added to the new book. So stay connected for this conversation. There's a lot to learn. Jennifer, welcome back to the podcast. It's so great to have you with me again.
It's great to be here. I'm thrilled.
This is like family reunion, old friends. It's so good to have you back.
It is. It is. It's lovely.
Well, we're going to start with an icebreaker question just for fun, right? To get our conversation started. Of course we are. And I'm going to take it from the end of life deck because that's one of my favorite things. And in keeping with our theme, this one actually is about dying, the dying process. It says, it's common to see a deceased family member or a friend in dreams or hallucinations when you're on the brink of death. Who would you want as your official greeter? Who would you like to see?
I'm going to start out with a tough one, Helen. Of course I want to see Bob, but I want to see my mom, my dad, my brother.
Nice. We call them hallucinations or visions, dreams, but that's what they call them. It's visioning. Visioning is the term that they use, and it happens to a lot of people. It can be a little bit startling for those who are watching, but not so much for the person experiencing it. It's right. It's actually a very pleasant thing from what I've observed. So, all right, that was a pretty deep question to get us going. I should have asked you something like, what color shoes are you wearing? Something casual.
Softball question. Come on, Helen.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be the Heart of Hospice podcast if there weren't some.
If we didn't talk about dying.
Yes,
that's true.
Yes.
That's true. Well, we're going to dive into all things caregiving today because we're talking about your new book. It's amazing. Congratulations. Absolutely love the cover of Care Boss. Tell me and my listeners about the theme of the book and how you came to define the role of a caregiver as a boss.
So I have, in my professional life, I have been a serial leader, CEO of all within healthcare, medicine. I have just had numerous interim leadership positions, most recently 2 really kind of big CEO positions for very large practices. So I've been a serial CEO. And then I cared for my mother when she was ill until she died, my husband and my father. And I lost my brother at a young age. And so I've been a serial family caregiver. And it occurred to me that there's some similarities. And I should point out that there's a woman named Lucinda Koza, who during the pandemic was leading a very large community of millennial and Gen Z family caregivers. She has since had premature twins, and she is not deep in the family care. She's in a different family caregiver role.
Right.
But she had been caring for her dad, and she had this rather large group of these younger family caregivers. And one day she posted, "Remember, you are the CEO of the situation," to her people. And, this was a real epiphany. I read this and I thought, oh my gosh, she's totally right. You are the CEO of the situation. I've done that situation and but it occurred to me that her people, as well as many other family caregivers of all ages, have never done the CEO role. So while as true as it could possibly be, maybe lots of caregivers didn't have the tools, the leadership resources and strategies and concepts to really fulfill that caregiver as leadership role. And so that was the genesis of Care Boss. The title of the book is entirely the publisher Wise Inc.'s credit. Like they came up. The working title of the book was Caregiver as CEO, which was true but cumbersome. And this brilliant woman with the publisher, she and I had a conversation, and she's like, "This book is Care Boss," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this book is so Care Boss."
It's perfect. Absolutely really perfect title. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't take any of that credit. She sometimes it takes the person who's a little bit outside of things to nail it like that, and she certainly did.
Well, it's interesting when you look at a younger person's perspective. Maybe it is a career person, college educated person who is not further along because they're younger, not further along in their job experiences. But then out of 55 million caregivers across the United States, a lot of those folks are not highly educated. They're not college educated. They're working blue collar jobs. And there are caregivers all over the spectrum when it comes to income and education and abilities. So
Yes.
CareBoss is for everybody. It's just an organized way of saying you're in charge of the care and you can do
you're a
this.
leader.
And here's how we know. Here are the resources and the basically workbook that you need to do this.
Right.
It's a map. It's a map.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, caregiving is crazy. It's messy. It can be really expensive. And then you add in the heart story that goes with that. If you're caring for someone that you care for.
Right. Yeah. No, it is a leadership position, and it is, I would contend it's a leadership position of greater importance than any Fortune 500 CEO, because it's your person and you love them more than anything. And you want to see it through in a way that expresses that love for them and then for yourself beyond their life. So, yeah.
Right. You want to make it out of the caregiving experience as a healthy individual, which is difficult to do.
Yes.
And when I say healthy, I'm talking about physically healthy, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, and financially as well.
Yes, and physically. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, caregiving touches all of that. So let's dive deeper into CareBoss. What are the main ideas for the book?
Well, the book is divided into 6 sections plus an introduction. The introduction talks about the similarities between caregiving and leadership. A good 50% of leadership feel lonely and isolated. I would say it's more for caregivers, but still, that's a similarity. And then 68% of leaders felt ill-prepared to do the job. And certainly, again, I would suspect the percentage is higher with caregivers, but it's a profound similarity. And just some of the words and concepts that we use to describe leadership are very true of family caregivers. So that's sort of the introduction, looks at caregiving and leadership and where do they cross over and are similar. And then the 6 sections of sort of the core of the book are, this will be a good test, strategy and planning, team and resources, data and analysis, facility, environmental services and supplies, that's a section in and of itself, self-management, and then at the very end, there's a section called Beginning to Realize the Vision, which is about what I consider to be one of the most difficult changes that happens in a caregiver's, caregiving trajectory, which is the transition from life-sustaining family caregiver to end-of-life family caregiver. So that last section is devoted to that. And so those are the sections, and each of them is robust, but not overwhelming. I tried to write it in a way that it's got really manageable subsections to each of those 6 big sections. And I think you can take it, sit down with it because the reason I did it this way, well, one reason is because this is how I learn best, and why not? I mean, the greater reason was because as a caregiver, you might have 2.5 minutes to sit down and right? You might have as little as 2.5 minutes.
Right.
And there are some subsections that you could easily read and gather something from in a very short period of time. You can, pick it up, and you don't have to necessarily go in order, but yeah, that's why it's designed that way with the caregiver in mind.
I think it's easy to parse out each piece, to tease out each piece that you need. So each of the sections starts out with a message. It's almost like a letter, like a memo.
Yeah, it's sort of an email
Yes.
from me to the caregiver.
Right. And I look at it and I see it says new message to the family caregiver, the subject feeling entirely alone, but not being entirely alone. And you relate it back to your caregiving experiences and what you've seen. And then you dive into this section. And you've got actually a list. Make a list of those who do help. Who are they? List them. And there's space for all of this. So it's quite a bit of a workbook as well as a resource. But one of the themes throughout all of it is you may feel like you're the only one doing this particular caregiving job, but there are millions of people all over the country who are doing their particular caregiving job. There's a lot of similarity, and here are some tools that I used that I know are successful because they worked for me. Or I didn't use them, and here's what I learned from that. Yeah. So was there a piece of advice or part of your experience that you left out of Care Boss that now you look back and you think, I wish we had kept that in?
So there was nothing that I removed that I wish I'd kept in, nothing like that. Funny that you bring up the messages. You're right. Every single section, including the introduction, and then at the very end, the last page, is one of those personal messages from me, and they relate specific to the section. The last one at the very last page of the book, almost the last sentence, I kind of wish I had expanded on it a little bit. This is at the very end. This is after the beginning to realize the vision message and section. And I say, I've been where you are. I understand. I am where you are headed, and it's fine here. I kind of wish I'd been able to expand on fine, on the word fine. I chose that word in particular. Some people say, I don't think fine is really what we're aiming for. Right? I have a friend whose husband always said, how was such and such? It was fine. And he goes, Jen, fine's not what we're going for, Well, sometimes we are going for fine. Sometimes, leveling out at fine is just right. And it's not fabulous. You know what? I still miss them all the people all my loved ones that I've taken care of and have died. It's not fabulous, but it is fine. And I kind of wish I'd expanded on that a little instead of just leaving that word for itself. But maybe this podcast will help with that.
Well, but do you think that fine looks like something different for everybody who goes through a caregiving experience with a loss? Because fine may be where you're having a deep day and you still feel fine.
Yeah. I think fine is a fine word. I mean, it's a fine concept. It's a fine, sometimes it's got, worse connotations. People say when you, especially as a griever, they ask you how you're doing and you say fine.
Right. It's a little really dismissive.
Mean it. Yeah. It's just going to get them out of your, if you really told them how you were, they run away or they, who knows what they would do. So that's, the word has gathered some, some connotations to it that I think are unfortunate. And so yes, I kind of wish I'd expanded on what I mean by fine, but it'll have to stand as just that.
Well, so if there's a caregiver listening to this, this is what I would tell you about saying you're fine to someone. Your feelings, your grief experience, wherever you are sitting with that right now, that's your business. If you choose to keep it private, not secret, if you choose to keep it private by saying, oh, I'm fine, so that you can deflect a conversation that you don't want to have, or feelings that you don't want to share because they're personal to you, that's fine. It is fine to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is true about fine. When you say I'm fine, it's gotten a little bit of a bad rap because, oh, you must be feeling terrible. No, I'm fine. Oh, you must really be feeling bad because you won't tell us. It's none of anybody's damn business how you feel unless you choose to share it. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So that's fine with me. Yeah. So the letters, I think, are such a blend of the business of caregiving, because it is business. And when you think about a caregiver being a boss, you're responsible for what did you call it? The chief everything officer?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a budget maybe. You're in charge of the money.
Yep.
You're in charge of the advocacy. So there's leadership there. There's communication skills. All of that gets wrapped up.
Yes.
This conversation is so good, but we're going to take a quick break. Hang on for more great content.
If you're looking for an easy solution to stay connected to your older loved ones, GrandPad is everything you need. It's the all-in-one tablet designed especially for seniors. With GrandPad, you get safe, simple video calling and photo sharing to connect the whole family. The GrandPad utilizes a simple format that allows seniors to enjoy games, music, email, and more. GrandPad comes with 4G LTE cellular service already included, so there's no need for Wi-Fi. Users can create a private family network that allows for secure photo and video sharing. At the core of the GrandPad team are the Grand Advisors, a group of seniors that continually inspire, test, and guide the development of GrandPad. The company has built a platform that empowers seniors of all ages and technological skills to safely connect with family, friends, and caregivers. No spam, no robocalls, only connections with those you trust. The GrandPad team strives to create a world where no senior is lonely or isolated. It's the smart choice to keep older adults connected. Visit our website today at grandpad.net/THOH or call 1-888-904-4723. GrandPad, keeping seniors connected.
I want to focus a little bit deeper on this last section because, of course, end-of-life caregiving is different. And you have titled it in a way that's a little surprising, beginning to realize the vision. What was your intent behind that title? You didn't say when your person begins to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this requires us to go back to the first section, which is strategy and planning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, let's go back even further to the introduction where I talk about what is leadership. Leadership is, setting the vision, bringing everything together, and communicating. And I think when you have all three of those with a layer of inspiration, I think that's when you have true leadership. So in the first section, strategy and planning, as a leader, it is simply impossible to look at your job without considering mission, vision, and core values. And so I spend a bit of time in that first section on mission, vision, and values. Mission being what we do, what our reason for being is. Vision being what we aspire to be and see happen in the future. And then, of course, core values is a fairly self-explanatory term. I give the reader ways how to create their own mission statement, how to create their own vision statement, and then I offer a mission statement of my own that I think encapsulates the caregiving role and the caregiver as leader role, and then same with vision. The vision that I offer in the book, and I say to people, you can use this as your own, or you can develop your own. But the one that I offer this is the vision statement: a comfortable, dignified end of life for my care recipient, a smooth transition from caregiver to griever, and an emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically healthy future for me, the family caregiver. And so if that's the vision, then the last section is beginning to realize the vision, right? That's the section where the precious time start, for sure the precious time starts,
Right.
if it hasn't already started. Hospice typically it's a transition from, like I said, life-sustaining family caregiving to end-of-life family caregiving in the home hospice setting.
Yeah, it's about seeing it through to the end, right? Because if your person has a progressive illness,
Right.
this is probably what you're looking at, right? And if you're going to be a caregiver for their lifetime,
right.
Yeah, that's exactly what they see.
It's impossible to consider the vision of the family caregiver role without considering the end of your care recipient's life and your life beyond theirs.
Right. I think that's what we do. I think we sell caregivers short because we're like, okay, we're going to support you through this caregiving experience so you can take the best care of your person. But we want you to thrive at the same time. And we forget about that because when everything is said and done and your person is no longer here with you, you're no longer a caregiver, we want you to be healthy. And I think we forget the wear and tear that it takes on the caregiver afterwards.
Right, right.
So I personally find that very meaningful that you included that in the vision. In your journal, your book, The Hospice Doctor's Widow, you wrote, "We are going through two different processes. He is dying. I am surviving."
Mm-hmm.
Such a hard statement to make because what that says is we are going on separate paths.
Right. We're intertwined. There's no question. You and your care recipient are in it together. There is intricate intertwinement of your lives.
Right.
But where you're headed is two different places.
Yeah.
And it's so important to keep that in mind. And I think that's somewhat what the vision statement or the process of creating a vision statement does, is say, yeah, this is where we're headed. We're not going to be, this is not going to go on forever.
It's only going to feel like it's going on forever.
Yes, at times it will feel like it's
Right.
going on forever. Many, many times it will feel
Yes.
that way, but it doesn't. It doesn't go on forever.
You even recommend that caregiver post the mission and the vision and the value statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think these are this is it. This is the core, the mission, the vision, and the core values. This is the core. This is what we have to come back to, right? After all the craziness of a particular day or the doctor's appointments or learning, getting a new scan or whatever it is, we come back to the mission, vision, and values. I think that's what a leader does, to make sure we're always coming back to what's our purpose and where are we headed and who are we, in terms of our values. And if we have that established firmly, for me, it's very helpful. And I always recommend posting these things, if you're into art or, you can do it pretty, you can do it just on a little piece of paper, somewhere where you're going to see it frequently, bathroom mirror, someplace where
The
it's
fridge.
going to,
Yeah.
the fridge, all of the above. There's nothing says you have to only post it once. But yes, I highly recommend. I recommend that in a corporate, in a corporate setting as well as in the home setting, because when you have visitors, you have other family members coming, and that will stir conversation. What's that? Oh, that's our mission statement. And you can bring people into the mission that way. You can bring people into the vision that way and start some discussions that really need to happen, especially where the vision is concerned. I do not, what I think are for obvious reasons, do not offer core values because they would be mine, and rather than the readers, and they need to be the readers. I have I think it's a fairly good tool, kind of work couple work pages to establish what your core values are, and a place to identify where your core values and your care recipients' core values differ. And I think the one important takeaway on that is that we are, as a caregiver, we are always, when it comes to core values, we are always defaulting to the care recipient's core values, right? Like if it's their core values to have the end of their life and their memorial or disposition be in line with a particular religion, right? But that's not ours.
Right.
Well, we're going to default to the care recipients, right? If my mother is a good Catholic and wants everything carried out exactly according to the Catholic Church, then we're going to do that. And when it's my turn, when I'm the care recipient, we're going to do it my way,
Right.
but so that's one place that I think is important to explore, not just the core values that y'all share, but where they differ, and reminding ourselves that we're going to default to the care recipient.
I think that's a really important piece of Care Boss, because that's quality of life. Quality of life, right?
Right. Quality of life is defined by the care recipient.
That's right. Right. And the caregiver does not have to agree with it. So let's go beyond the religious stuff, because we know that there are differences of opinions between caregiver and care recipient in situations like that. But let's go into something as deep as habits, something as atomic as diet. You've had somebody that's been a diabetic or a cardiac patient, and they haven't been able to eat fatty foods or salty foods or sugary foods. And now they're like, quality of life is I get to eat whatever I want. And that's one of those things that caregivers really have trouble, because as an advocate, I have been cooking low salt, unprocessed foods. I've been making sure you didn't get too many calories and pop your blood sugar up. And now you're telling me we're not going to do that anymore and we're just going to let it happen. That's one of those things that speaks to quality of life that a caregiver may disagree and really want to push back on.
Yeah, that one is definitely, I think, part of that beginning to realize the vision transition that, yeah, you do. And the average duration of family caregiving is 4.5 years. So in most cases, for years, you have been cooking that low salt, low sodium diet, and sort of every day, sometimes within an hour of a day, you are doing your absolute best to make sure your care recipient is living fully. And we're maximizing and optimizing all the time and so forth. And it does feel very sudden. I mean, you can't be doing that for years, and then you get admitted, your care recipient gets admitted to hospice status, and all of a sudden that's all off the table. It's just a very hard adjustment for the caregiver to make.
I agree. I think the culture of the caregiving has to change.
Yes, that's a great point. The culture, yes.
And we know in business, it is really difficult to create culture change.
Yes. It's what the business folks would call a paradigm shift, right? It's a paradigm shift of astronomical proportions.
Yeah. It's like telling a person, you've been having dialysis for the last 3 years and now it's no longer effective, so we want to stop it. But you have been telling me for the last 3 years that if I didn't have dialysis, I'm going to die.
Right.
Yeah. So the values change. What you consider quality of life as a care recipient or as a caregiver has to change.
Yep.
Yeah. So did you find situations in your experience with Bob, with your husband, as he was ill, that those values butted heads sometimes between you and him?
No, I don't. It wasn't the values where he was very plain about And he had been, Bob was a hospice and palliative care physician. So we had talked around the dinner table many, many nights about, a particular patient and the scenario. And then I think what people naturally do when they're assessing someone else's situation is to say, well, if it were me, right, I would want this. And so we had both been, very plain about that long before Bob became ill. I had a very good handle on what his core values were, especially from an end of life standpoint. I don't think we had very many, or any perhaps, points where our core values conflicted. Plus, I'd already done this for my mom, and some other family members, more distant family members, and I kind of knew how to focus and sort out all the other stuff for what does he want? What does he want? And then of course ask him that sort of thing until he couldn't answer anymore. Then I had to rely on my memory and, knowing what his values were.
Well, and doesn't that teach us the value of having these conversations? Even, we call it advanced care planning, an advanced care planning discussion or conversation. But the best advanced care planning happens when you're sitting around the dinner table or you're on the way home from seeing someone in the hospital or from a funeral. I mean, I know that I've been in the car with my husband and looked at him and said, don't you ever do that to me. Don't, if this should happen to me, if I had a stroke or this was my situation, don't let them do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because otherwise we might not look at those scenarios. And I think sometimes, although you can't predict every situation, it's good to have some of these more atomic directives put into place. At least tell your caregiver, this is not the decision I would want you to make.
Right.
Interesting. So what do you want your readers to take away from Care Boss, and how do you want them to feel after they read it?
I want the caregivers to feel empowered. I want them to feel visionary, and I want them to feel supported. I did everything I could in this book to offer support. And so that's mainly what I want them to feel and take away.
I love the premise of the book. I think when I read what I read, because you sent me an advance copy months ago before the book came out, and then seeing how the book was put together and the cover, I'm like, I feel I'm an advocate. I'm strong. I have what I need. Yeah, this is exactly it, right? You want to feel maybe inspired it sounds too lofty, but I think that's what it is. You can be inspired as a caregiver. It's hard work. There's no sugarcoating, right? It's a job. Right. That's why you call it Care Boss. But I think caregivers need to know what they're doing is so valuable, and you bring this leadership position to life in all these little decisions that you're making. You turn your person, you call the doctor for your person. You're being a care boss.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, so how can readers find you? And we need to mention, too, that you have The Hospice Doctor's Widow, which is one of my favorite books. Go ahead and tell the listeners about Hospice Doctor's Widows. It's a pretty cool piece.
Sure. So The Hospice Doctor's Widow is an art journal. The full new title of Hospice Doctor's Widow is The Hospice Doctor's Widow, an art journal of caregiving and grief. When my late husband, Bob Lemberg, who was a hospice and palliative care physician, was diagnosed with a stage 4 metastatic terminal cancer, and I was his caregiver, I started to keep an art journal as a form of self-care. It was that simple. It was just me, that's my outlet is mostly creativity, kind of journaling and collage sort of stuff. And so I started this doing these digital collages where I just documented my feelings, my thoughts. I documented a number of his, a lot of his wisdom that he had incorporated or had implemented in his care for palliative care and hospice patients, because we were now having to turn that wisdom on ourselves. And so anyway, I create each page, if you're wondering what an art journal is, it's creating some sort of art. For me, it's creating some sort of artistic representation of a concept, a thought, a feeling, that sort of thing. And then I write my journal note on top of the art. And that's what an art journal is. It's like a regular journal with art. And so I did this thing and I kept going for about a year after he died. And then I showed it to a physician I was working with who was diagnosing 3 different patients with ALS. And this doctor took the journal home, read it, came back and said, yeah, you're not getting your journal back. I will be loaning it to these patients and their spouses. And you need to figure out how to get that thing published. And I did. I found a small publisher, and the book was initially released in February of 2020, and it's done really well. It won a bunch of awards, and what's perhaps more important to me is that it has helped thousands of people. But I recently took the opportunity, as I changed to a new publisher, I took the opportunity to issue The Hospice Doctor's Widow as a second edition, which means it's the same book, but it has a foreword written by Pulitzer nominee Elizabeth Copeland. It's a lovely little short foreword, but it really helps the book a lot. And then at the end of the book of The Hospice Doctor's Widow, there are 9 additional art journal entries that are all grief-based. They're all after loss art journal entries, which I think evens that book out a bit. That book was probably 2/3 caregiving, 1/3 grief, and these additional, evens that these additional after loss entries really kind of even that out, I think, a little bit, so that it's more appropriate. It goes both ways. It can be a book you give someone who's in the caregiver role, and it can be a book you give to someone just after the caregiving role has ended with the death of their care recipient. So I'm really pleased with it. I like how it turned out. Yeah, it's good.
It's a fantastic book. It's one of my favorites to look at and go back in and look at. And one of the things that I really like about it is that it is very honest. It's not flowery. It has moments of great beauty and insight, but it also has moments where you shared things that were said that were very hurtful. And I think it's so relatable because caregiving isn't all flowery, right? You and Bob had your moment. He was a hospice physician, and still there were moments where this was grating and it was hard. And I think you show a lot of honesty in that, and it's very powerful. So it is a beautiful book. So how can readers find you, find your website, check your social media out, and buy a copy of Care Boss?
My website is Jennifer A. O'Brien, OBRIEN.com. That's where you can do all sorts of things there. I have a lot of free resources on the resource page, and you can purchase the book, link to purchase the book either directly from the publisher or from Amazon via my website. The book is available, both books are available internationally on Amazon. That was important because I have some folks that find my work useful in other countries, and so that was important to me to make them available internationally. But yeah, and then I have not, the social media question is an interesting one. My Instagram handle is Hospice Doctor's Widow, with doctor spelled out. And And that's a great place to find me. I have not changed that to Jennifer O'Brien or Jennifer A. O'Brien for lots of reasons, and I probably won't. I will probably stay Hospice Doctor's Widow on Instagram. LinkedIn and Facebook, I'm Jennifer A. O'Brien in both those places. So I'm sure a branding consultant would not be happy with me on this, but it's how it goes sometimes. You got to be who you are.
Oh, well, you are searchable, you are findable. So jenniferaobrien.com, that's how they can connect with you. Find your resources, which the At Peace Toolkit is one of them.
Yes.
Very nice.
There are a number of I'm very proud of the free downloads that I have created and offer on the resources page.
Yeah, I have utilized those myself. So Jennifer, thanks for coming back on the show. It's great. I love Care Boss. It's awesome. Best wishes with the book.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.